We're back, baby. It is the Daily Stripe, Friday, July 21st. Good to see you guys. How are you?
Good, man. It's Friday. Barbenheimer time.
Barbenheimer time this weekend. Engagement party. Toss's mom's in town. The vibes are high in Los Angeles, California. And we're changing it up a little bit. We always talk about the teams at the bottom of the barrel in the NFL, or at the bottom of the barrel last year. We go through their schedules. But we're going to start off nice and fun and play our schedule game to kick it off. Changing it up. We're going with the Cincinnati Bengals today.
We don't want to wait in
Wanna
case a
wait.
special guest come in.
We haven't done the schedule breakdown with the special guest, so we'll do the schedule breakdown ourselves, and then we'll just talk
Sure,
with
we
the
have.
special guest.
We did it with Chris Harris, and we did it with Desmond Johnson, and we did it.
Willie Mack.
Yeah, and Willie McFadden.
All right, we can wait.
Well, I'll just throw this out there. The over-under for this particular team, the Cincinnati Bengals, is 11.5. Over at -106 right now. The under at -116. So just throwing that out there. That is a high number, boys. That is
11.5.
Yeah,
I'm going over.
I'm going over as well. I think this team is legit.
They want you to think that it's the high number, and they want you to take the under. They have their away games, just to kind of tease. I'll tease the schedule. How about that? We won't say win or loss with our guest. And I'll throw it up on the screen. We'll tease the schedule a little bit for the Bengals. Their away games are, first of all, they have the Texans on the schedule, which is nice. They do go to Kansas City this year, which is pretty tough. At Jacksonville and at San Francisco are tough, but they're also at Arizona and at Tennessee, which I think are very winnable games. And then they have the Colts and the Texans, and presumably, and then outside of Jacksonville, like they should sweep that division. So,
and a fun little revenge game against the team that beat them in the Super Bowl 2 years ago.
They do have a fun little revenge game, which they should. It's a very different team that we're seeing in the Super Bowl.
It is a very different team. Since we've done their schedule prediction, the Rams, I'm speaking of here, I have felt a little bit differently about what that team could be competition-wise. Not saying that I think they're going to win 11 or 12 games or anything like that, but if Matt Stafford's healthy, and Aaron Donald is healthy, and Cooper Kupp is healthy, that it's a formidable team.
It's not bad. I don't think the team is bad, but I think that we're talking. Look, I just threw up the depth chart right here. We're talking about a Cincinnati Bengals team that should be contending for the Super Bowl, should be at the worst, the number 2 contender for the Super Bowl if everything's going right, out of the AFC, in a very tough AFC, versus the Rams, which are the Rams a top 10 team in the NFC?
No.
Yeah, we could break it down. Who's the best?
I think they absolutely could end up a top 10 team in the NFC.
They could,
but I think there's 6 teams worse than them for sure.
Okay, so well, we could go through it. We have time before our potential special guest comes through. NFC East, Philadelphia Eagles or the Rams. The Eagles, right?
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Cowboys or Rams?
Cowboys.
Giants or Rams?
Giants.
I'm going to lean Giants. They made the playoffs last year. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. But would we be surprised?
Shout out to Iron Man XRP. Sorry, Toss, to cut you off. This says "Who Day snitches." I had to shout that out. Sorry, Alex, you were saying?
I was just saying that benefit of the doubt to the Giants, and for the sake of this little exercise, I'll give them the bump. But would I be surprised if the Rams ended up with a better record than the Giants? I wouldn't be that surprised. I'll just say that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel you. Yeah, I mean, look, the Giants, I think, were a surprise team for a lot of us last year, and they punched a bit above their weight class. So we'll see if they can maintain it and get there. We'll go to so that's the Commanders. The Rams are Commanders.
Sorry, the Rams are better than Commanders.
Okay. Yeah. So right now we're at 3 teams. Packers or Rams?
I think it's a toss-up.
Okay, we'll skip them. Lions or Rams?
Lions.
Vikings or Rams?
Vikings.
Dude, I'm Team Vikings. Team Vikings are good. Better than the Rams.
Were you okay?
What?
I mean, they won a large like a large number of very close margin games last year that a lot of people felt were lucky, and by the time they got to the playoffs, it seemed as if it were lucky. So, I mean, I wouldn't be that surprised if they had a significant regression. The Vikings, that is.
Okay.
It's not like the Packers were dominant last year and they still were incredible.
Significant regression.
Well, if we expect the Lions to be the best team in that division, and if Jordan Love is good, the Packers, I believe, have a better roster through and through, all across the board. Not saying that, Justin Jefferson isn't the best player between those two teams, but I'm just not fully convinced by the Vikings or the Packers and the Bears. I think the Rams could be better than all three of those teams.
Okay, the Bears I could give. How about any of the teams in the South? Saints, Panthers. Because I think we think the Rams are better than the Bucks.
I'd say the Panthers and the Saints have a chance to be better.
Okay, so and then we get what about in their division? We think the Niners will obviously be better than the Rams.
They're better than the Cardinals for sure. That's a gimme. The Cardinals might be the worst team in football, and then I think it's a toss-up with Seattle. We'll see how Geno plays.
Yeah, back to the Bengals right here. Okay, so they are a top 10 team in the NFC, so that's fair. We went through it. Let's go through the Bengals depth chart a little bit here as we're talking about them. I think the biggest question mark on the offense is Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I think it's got to be, with the off the field stuff and, with, contract negotiations and all of that, especially just what's going around with the NFL right now with running backs and their contracts. It's got to be the biggest question mark. I mean, you've got 3 solid receivers that, are really productive, maybe the top, 2 duo in the league. It's probably the best receiving room in the entire league. I mean, maybe the tight end position is not, as sexy as you'd like it to be. In years past, you've definitely had better options, but it's fine. Their line has been bumped and bruised in the past, but they've definitely addressed a lot of their needs. I think the defense could probably use a solid upgrade, maybe on like the linebacker position, but definitely like their front 4. I think that those guys up front are pretty ferocious.
Look at the depth they have. I mean, Hubbard, Reeder, Hill, and Hendrickson to start, but then they have Osai, our guy out of Texas, and then their first-round pick, Miles Murphy, over there. Defensive line depth is something that's not often discussed when you discuss the Cincinnati Bengals, but they have that in spades. And I would say, honestly, in the defensive backfield too, they spent a high draft pick on Cam Taylor-Britt. He'll start up across from Chidobe Awuzie, who's we shouted him out yesterday on our Best of Believe show. He's had a really good run with the Bengals. And then you have Mike Hilton, DJ Turner, Jordan Battle, Dax Hill. I mean, they've spent a lot of draft capital on the defensive backfield, the Bengals, and they're hoping it pays dividends. And, if you're going to beat teams, it's a very good defensive play, no pun intended, against what you're going to be seeing in the AFC. You have Mahomes, you have Cheetah and the Dolphins offense, and you have the Buffalo Bills, and we could go on, but it's a very pass-happy AFC, and you need that defensive backfield depth.
I also believe that when it comes to your team having a really pass-happy offense, right, big weapons, Joe Burrow being, one of the best offenses in football, that a lot of teams are going to be trying to throw against you and play catch-up. So you need to have a good defensive backfield to, partner with your good offense.
Yeah, I agree. I just got a notification. Sorry, I didn't mean to look at my phone, but Melvin Gordon just signed in the division. Baltimore Ravens.
Nice. Good for him.
Good for him, for sure. Good for the Ravens, too.
Honestly, I mean, I've always been a Melvin Gordon fan, not just because of the Chargers, but he's a guy that I think is just always looking just to play football. I mean, last year with the Broncos, it was super awkward, and things were kind of weird in the locker room, and I think he just wants to play ball.
I think things were clear. I agree, and I think things were clearly very weird in the locker room. I mean, we're seeing KJ Wright's one of those guys in the media lately that's kind of popping off. in his own right. No, again, no pun intended. But we saw, I think it was Golden Tate go on his show. Yeah, Golden Tate, and he said that Russell Wilson's going to have some phone calls to make and apologies to make when it comes to, when in his post playing career, he's gonna have to call some guys and apologize. So I think that's
from Seattle.
That's from Seattle.
Ooh, not great.
That's from his number one receiver at a point in Seattle.
That means they're not boys anymore. If you're going to
No.
say stuff like that, that's crazy.
When there's smoke, there's fire. Like when
I
you
wonder
see a guy.
What do you think? Do you think that there are more players in the league that like Russell Wilson or like Future? The rapper.
Future.
For sure.
I don't think it's a question. I think that's I think the question's great, but I don't think that's a question in the sense that, like, I think more people for sure like Future. Look, dude, when there's smoke, there's fire. When you're winning, cures everything. Nobody talks. The minute you start losing, everything comes out. It's no surprise. Yeah. If he was winning in Denver, if the Broncos came out, they beat Seattle to start the year, there wasn't like that. Nathaniel Hackett didn't prove in the first kickoff of that game that he wasn't capable of being a head coach in the first game, and they were winning, and the Broncos were what we thought they could be, you wouldn't hear nothing about Russell Wilson.
Nothing.
Or less. But, I do think that they...
Which kind of blows my mind that, like, you would think that these GMs, like, they understand what's going on in the league, right? They talk to other players, they talk to other executives, they talk to other locker rooms and stuff like that. And I feel like they have to have some inkling to know that he's that type of guy that people don't really like. So why is John Elway spending an arm and a leg to bring him into your organization?
Bro, another good question on you, Nikolai, because one that I'd love to answer. Look at John Elway's track record for quarterbacks outside of Peyton Manning.
He brought in.
Yeah, he's brought in Cutler. He's had Orton. He drafted Tebow. He drafted Paxton Lynch. He brought in Joe Flacco. Like
Osweiler.
The guy is the guy for being one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. If it was not for Peyton Manning, he would have blown this to smithereens. So
he probably wouldn't have had a job, honestly, if it wasn't for Peyton Manning.
100%. If it wasn't for his name too. Like you're the Denver Broncos organization. You're going to fire John Elway.
Bringing in a veteran who has already won, who is respected by his play, is something that worked out for Elway in past. So I could see how, this being almost a last ditch effort to kind of replicate what he did bringing Peyton Manning in there. And obviously Russell Wilson's not at the same age and health status as Peyton Manning. Of course, there are still question marks about the guy, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of wild to hear that. Nick, your future statement, there's definitely players on other NFL teams that don't know who Russell Wilson is, and they know who Future is. We know that. After we've talked to enough NFL players to know that not every single guy knows every single player on every team. Now, Russell Wilson's a guy that's still constantly
crazy
in the media. Yeah,
if you're in the NFL and you don't know who Russell Wilson is, that's crazy.
There's definitely guys out there, though.
There might be a few, but like that is wild if you don't know who he is and you're playing in the NFL.
Maybe not personally, but if you don't I don't know. He's also the quarterback. Like
I could see guys being like, "What's that? Is that a guy the guy from the Is that guy quarterback of the Broncos?" Yeah. All right.
No, I disagree. I think everyone he's one of those guys. If you grow up watching football and you're involved in football, you know who Russell Wilson is.
It's different if it's like who's the left tackle for the Carolina Panthers.
Of course, but we've seen guys come in the NFL as rookies who didn't watch the NFL growing up
and didn't know the divisions and stuff. Yeah, but I think
exactly. Maybe they'll learn who Russell Wilson is if they're playing in division. But if they're in the NFC North, why do they need to know who Russell Wilson is?
I also think that like Future helps Russell Wilson's brand a little bit too. They know who he is because like Russell Wilson's raising Future's kid. Like that's like in like the pop culture media.
Mm-hmm. It is true. We have Charles. I want to show this. We could show Charles H. coming from that Super Bowl trophy this year. Enough said. Who day? Shout out to you, Charles H.
Let's go back to the Bengals.
I want to. If they don't win the Super Bowl, is it a bust?
No, it's not a bust. I don't think it's a bust because we all know it's really difficult to win the Super Bowl. You look at the track record of the last 20 years, and it's the same teams, it's the same quarterbacks for the most part. I really want to know, in terms of Joe Burrow's legacy, like, is he ahead of schedule? What does he have to do this year to kind of start putting himself in the conversation of being, one of the greats when it comes down to it? I mean, I know it's super early in his career, but Mahomes at this point has already gotten one done for himself, at Joe Burrow's age, and he's already gotten an MVP. Does Joe, if he wins the MVP this year, like, is that enough, or does he have to win the Super Bowl?
I don't think he's on the. I don't think his track is so MVP focused. Like, there are guys like Big Ben, Eli Manning that, like, they weren't like the MVP of the league. That was for
But Joe
Peyton
could
Manning.
definitely win the MVP.
He could. I mean, look, Charles H. If the Bengals go 14-3, he's going to be the reason they go 14-3. And again, we want to shout the defense out because there's great depth and great players there. But Burrow will be ultimately the reason they go 14-3 because he throws well, and I think he could win the MVP there.
I also disagree with the comment about him not being the type of player that, like, needs to go for the MVP. He won the Heisman. Like, it's like the MVP of college football, So, like, he's definitely capable, and I definitely think that he's that type of player that can. He's not. I would not put him in the same realm as, like, Eli and Big Ben.
Why? Well, maybe not Eli, but why not Big Ben? Big Ben's an all-time player and a two-time champ, and he's behind Big Ben's schedule. Big Ben had already won.
Yeah, I think that when it comes down to it, I think Joe's more talented, and I think that he's got more of that superstar take over your team factor that Big Ben had. Big Ben was great. I mean, it's no slight on him, but he also had incredible defenses his entire career. He had one of the best coaches of all time, two of the best coaches of all time, Cowher and Tomlin. And Joe, his defense is fine. It's not like blowing your socks off, His head coach was a rookie head coach. So, I mean,
no, I think he's been with them for a couple years. He had his rookie. It's going to be Zach Taylor's fourth year.
No, I know, but I'm saying that this is his.
Yeah.
Like, this is his first team, his first crack at a job.
Yeah. I think the way that I am considering it right now, and maybe this is just on the heels of having watched the Netflix doc series or a couple of episodes, quarterback, and seeing some more Mahomes footage more recently than Joey B. Last time I saw Joey B in the media was at the white party. Michael Rubin looked like he was having a good time. He looked swaggy as ever. Joe Cool. But maybe we just need to have the conversation until one of these other young quarterbacks wins a Super Bowl that Mahomes is in his own tier and these other guys are competing with each other. And so I think for Burrow, it's very feasible that he can be at the top of that food chain. And I think an MVP very much cements himself, just like, Jalen Hurts is going to be vying for that MVP. And there is very much a clear path for him to put up nasty numbers once again in Philadelphia with who else is in the rest of the NFC. But same thing with Josh Allen, like, got into the AFC Championship, never won an MVP, right? Lamar has an MVP, but doesn't have the pedigree of playoff success that a guy like Joe Burrow does. And at this point, Lamar's MVP is slightly removed from where we are in just the current conversations of what's going on in the NFL right now and going into this season.
Okay. So let me ask you this, though. If Hurts wins the MVP and Burrow wins the Super Bowl, who are we talking about as a better quarterback next year?
If Hurts wins the MVP and Joe wins Super Bowl, I think Joe, because I think right now, by and large, most people are saying that Joe is the number 2 quarterback in the league already.
Yes, agreed. And also back-to-back AFC Championship runs, one of which he got to a Super Bowl. And as Nick pointed out, the defense was good last year, and I expect it to be better this year, but it's not the same as the Eagles defense was last year. I'm also of the opinion where, as much as I love Jalen Hurts, I need to see it one more year. He has to continue to put it together. Like, he took.
Yes, but I think we're confident that he'll do that, though.
Absolutely. I think he's that type of grinder. And I think so is Joe Burrow. Like,
yeah,
this is the exciting part about it, is these guys they're awesome to root for. They're incredibly talented, and I don't see any of them slowing down.
I agree. And I think when it comes down to Jalen, I think he's got a tougher hill to climb a little bit, just because of, he had a chip on his shoulder coming out of college. He was a second-round quarterback. People had questions whether or not he can actually be a sustainable starting quarterback in the league. That was never a question with Joe. He was number 1 overall. He won the Heisman, won the Natty. You know, even coming back from injury, people knew he was going to be good right away. With Jalen, I still think people still probably question it. Like, is it for real? Like you said, Toss, like I need to see more of it. So still think he's got a tougher hill to climb when it comes to just like all-inclusive legacy of how you play. And look, I mean, the guy's been really great at adding another dimension to his game every single year and improving and making his arm stronger and improving in his accuracy. I mean, I think out of any quarterback in the NFL, he's definitely made the most strides that I've seen of progress for any quarterback. So, I mean,
you're talking about Hurts.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Hurts.
I'd throw in there Josh Allen, but Josh Allen had more time to do it.
Yeah.
But
I
Hurts
think
is like
Josh
about
Allen's
to
also one of
jump
those,
him though, dude. Like
I
Josh
also
Allen.
think that Josh Allen's one of those cases where it's like same with Joe a little bit. Like you're taken in the top 10 of the first round.
The
Like you're
expectation is
expected.
there.
Yeah, exactly. Expected. Jalen still like has this like you're still kind of like in this like awe mode where you're like this like you're surprised like oh my gosh like wow this really worked out, 2nd round draft pick Jalen Hurts, like didn't think this is gonna happen, you know.
But like we did and we knew, and
but I mean by and
we
large
were sitting there on draft day. Remember who I wanted the Patriots to take in the 2nd round? I was pissed. I wanted the Pats to take Jalen Hurts. Like I was really bummed.
But do you think it really would have worked out like it's working out right now if he was on the Pats?
Not the exact same way, but he is one thing we know about him, and similar to Joe Burrow, which I think they would make that is a Super Bowl I'd love to see. Objectively, is Burrow versus Hurts.
That'd be
They
sick.
are both the ultimate competitor gamers that we've seen in college and now the pros. Like these two over the past 5 years at the quarterback spot. You want to talk about who the pinnacle was at the quarterback position outside of Mahomes? It's Tom Brady. And what everyone knows about Tom Brady? Was he the most athletic guy in the room? No. Did he have the strongest arm in the room? No. But the guy was the ultimate competitor, super precise, and constantly committed to growing. And I think those two guys embody him. And that's why it goes back to the point where, like, I'm not saying the MVP doesn't matter, but the Super Bowl to Joe Burrow's legacy matters more because people view him. Yes, you're right, Nick. He is the Heisman Trophy winner in college football. But when it comes to Joe Burrow's legacy in college, it comes to his legacy so far in the NFL, people associate that with winning. He's more of a winner than he is like a stat guy and a stat stuffer in a game. Like everyone looks at Josh Allen stats, Hurts stats, Mahomes stats. Those are more, and then maybe it's a fantasy thing, but people are more concerned with those. Where it comes to Joe Burrow, he's more judged on his wins and losses, and that's why I think ultimately a Super Bowl means more to his legacy. So is he on the right track? Yes, but I think he has to win one the next couple of years to like really cement himself there.
But to DA this thing, to devil's advocate, as I often like to do, and just bring up Nick's point again, like, and combine it with yours and Charles H's comment. If they go 14-3, he always will have the numbers from a performance standpoint, where at that point he would be, if they were the best team in the AFC, the MVP of the league. You know what I mean? Like,
if they go 14-3,
and he has similar numbers to what he had last year. He throws for 4,800 yards and he throws for 30 plus touchdowns and less than 10 interceptions. Like, he's going to win the MVP, you know, like it's the interception number that needs to go down a little bit for him. I mean, he threw 12 last year, but if he can, you know, get to Rodgers level efficiency, which is, look, not many people are able to do that. That is one of the things that Aaron Rodgers has been able to do in almost a class of his own. I'll throw Tom in there as well, of course, but the efficiency and the amount of times that those guys did not turn the ball over. That's the one thing Joe still needs to work on. I think the blemish in his game is that he still, you know, stays in the pocket a little bit too long. And a lot of times that's what turns plays into unbelievable down the field, you know, balls to Higgins, to Jamar Chase. And you kind of have to live with some of those sacks and, you know, bad field position every now and then with him. But you do the same thing with Mahomes, right? You do the same thing with Josh Allen. That's just kind of what those guys are nowadays. Same thing with Lawrence and Herbert too. Like, all those guys play in that same mindset of football. But I will say that the Hurts point to the Patriots, he does not develop as a thrower in the same way that he already developed as a thrower under Steichen, who was y'all's offensive coordinator last year. Like, that doesn't change, right? Like, and he isn't better off for it.
I'm not saying he's not. He may not be as good of a player, may not be an MVP candidate, but he still would have been good. Like,
I think it's more akin to like a better version of what you had with Cam when Cam was there and he couldn't really throw.
But and there were games that like we were kind of in it that season at points when he was healthy. Like, there were games
never a contender, but a competitive team and hard to beat. Very
always
hard
will be
to beat.
competitive when you have Bill Belichick.
I want to play a fun little game really quickly. So I
Go
just
for
thought
it.
of on the fly here. So, early 2000s to, I guess up until last year, right? We had Tom Brady, we had Philip Rivers, we had Ben Roethlisberger, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers is still here. Give me your comparisons in terms of just like all of the young guys now, because it's a new regime now, right? Obviously, Mahomes is Brady. Like he's already kind of got out into a lead already, gotten 2 Super Bowls. None of the young guys have won a Super Bowl yet, besides him. You got
I
Josh
think
Allen, you got Justin Herbert, you got Trevor Lawrence, you got Tua, you got Joe Burrow, you got Lamar still, you got Jalen Hurts, as we're mentioning. So who are the best comparisons right now? Because this is a young league now. There's rarely a guy on an NFL team that's your quarterback that is over 30 years old. I mean, I'm looking down the list right now. The Jets have Aaron Rodgers. No one in the North has a quarterback over the age of 30. Tannehill, I guess, in Tennessee. Garoppolo and Wilson in
Kirk.
the AFC West. But that's it in terms of the AFC.
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins.
Geno.
Dak, is Dak turned 30 yet, or is he 29?
I don't think he's 30 yet. So it's Kirk, it's Geno, it's Did you say Russ? Did you say Russell Wilson?
Yep.
Russ Rodgers.
Derek Carr.
Okay, I could go comps. I think I don't know. This may not be a sexy one for Joe, and it may not, but I mean it in a really good way. Like a guy that was to me a gamer, and he went to a Super Bowl, probably should have won the Super Bowl MVP player, and had some really unbelievable seasons. I think he could be better than this guy, and I hope he is. But like Matt Ryan right now, like good thrower, really good accuracy, throws a lot of yards, wins games. Like I know we have such a sour taste in our mouth from Matt Ryan over the past couple seasons, but like he won the MVP. And he had a couple seasons where he was a top 3 quarterback and was, again, a year where he was the best quarterback. And if it wasn't for the most biblical collapse in the history of sports, he would have a Super Bowl.
Okay.
I just don't know who
it's really it's super
tough.
hard to like compare like these young guys to guys who are Hall of Famers. Like saying that someone is Peyton Manning here, like that's really tough to say. But I think I think for like just the sake of the game, like we'll try our best to like, give the closest comparison as you can.
Sure.
I'm saying Joe's kind of like Aaron Rodgers in my opinion.
But yeah, my pushback on Matt Ryan is he got to the Super Bowl as his second year in the NFL. It's just different. What he was able to do and tapping into a prime version of himself. And that means there's even better football yet to come from him. Like he's already surpassed Matt Ryan just from a skill to skill standpoint. Who's a better QB? Now, I don't disagree with you, Josh. If like maybe the accolades end up being that at the end of it, it could happen. One MVP and maybe he never goes back to a Super Bowl. I don't think that's what's going to happen because I think he's just too gritty to not get there. I just believe in him, and I don't know. I didn't necessarily feel the same way about Matt Ryan, where coming into a season, I was saying Matt Ryan's the second best quarterback in the league.
I mean, Matt Ryan, I understand what you're saying, but Matt Ryan,
you don't need to tell me. You don't need to tell me any of his numbers, because I just never believed that he was the second best quarterback in the league.
But I think the quarterback, where he was is different than where Joe got in the wave of a changing of the guard. Like if Joe came in when Matt Ryan was there, he wouldn't be the second best quarterback in the league either. He wouldn't be the third best quarterback in the league either because there was Aaron, probably not the fourth, because there was Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and Drew Brees. Yeah,
was he ever better than Russell Wilson at that point either?
There was times where he was better than Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson doesn't have an MVP. Like Matt Ryan for 35 touchdowns and 7 picks.
I'm just thinking. I'm saying like when we were considering and making QB list at the time, do you think many people were putting Matt Ryan ahead of Russell Wilson?
On some years, yeah, for sure. I think there was times where Russell Wilson was
I would say majority of the years. No, maybe after the MVP year. Okay, yeah, that's reasonable.
I think I'm curious. What do you guys think about Herbert and Lawrence? Then I think there's because right now we've only seen Mahomes and these young guys win. So maybe not from a winning standpoint, from a skill set standpoint. I think Lawrence is in that Andrew Luck. Like they have that same vibe to me. Like I think he
It's
takes
hard.
that.
That's hard because it's like I want to look at like a career. Like Andrew Luck cut it short, so I don't even want to put him in the mix. Honestly, he'd still be playing right now if he continued to be the regular trajectory of a quarterback. I kind of like, man, it's hard. I mean, I think just being on the Chargers, like you got to give Herbert the Philip Rivers comp. As long as you're on the Chargers, you're probably not going to have success winning. We'll see. I mean, they tend to charger it quite often.
I feel better about him than I ever did about Flett. To be
Sure,
honest.
yeah. I mean,
it's better.
He's a better quarterback,
right?
And Rivers a Hall of Famer.
Yeah,
I would probably say, and this maybe
that's saying something. That's saying something really meaningful when we say that. I know we say it kind of passe. What about Luck with Herbert?
Their skill set's
right?
super similar. Yeah, Herbert to me is like, I think if you guys had a different head, this is like the. Sorry, bless you.
Thank you,
buddy. This is the.
I'm allergic to Chargers talk.
The classic thing of your. I think we could say this about your franchises. It's never the players. It's always, at least in the last decade, it's always the front office and it's always whoever's running the show. Those are like the biggest issues like that. And I think, and we'll see what happens with Staley, but I think the three of us so far are very unimpressed by Staley. And this team is, I know the running back questions are apparent,
we
but
talked to one of his players the other day and he was unimpressed by Staley. The guy was in that locker room with him.
Yeah. To me, it's definitely one of those things where I believe that Herbert, from a talent standpoint, is definitely top 5. Like we made our list the other day, and I know we kind of went at Josh Allen kind of harshly, but I'm done with the Josh Allen dick ride. I really am. Like I from him now, I need to see more. Like you be better than a fantasy quarterback. Don't lead the league in turnovers. Like I know he didn't throw 30 picks like Jameis, but he turned the ball over 20 plus times. As a guy who, and not as I know you said the other day, like Lawrence is in that realm too, but Lawrence was his first year head coach. Josh Allen's supposed to be the MVP, supposed to have gone to a Super Bowl last year, not lose to the Cincinnati Bengals when Joe Burrow and that defense, the defense is not, that defense crushed the Bills last year. And I know we haven't been cursing a lot because we've been putting our show on the radio and I guess we will, but they beat the fuck out of them. Part
it's
of
like
my
funny,
life.
like when you hear like your dad curse and you.
I know. I feel like we used to curse all. We used to curse all the time, but since we've been on like on radio and TV, we haven't. But
we've grown up,
Well,
they've grown up. But like they beat the fuck out of the Bills.
Anyone that watched us do that breakdown, I mean, like maybe we didn't acknowledge it. I felt like we did. That the margins between like QB 3 and 8 are very close. Like it's not it's razor thin margins there. What was difficult for us, as we all witnessed, was that 8, 9, 10 was when it got really tough and we didn't know who to pick. None of us, we all had our own opinions about it because at that point you're past the best 8 quarterbacks in the league. And Josh Allen is a part of that. And on any given Sunday, he could be number 3. And on any given Sunday, he could be number 2 because I'm never going to put him number 1. At this point, Mahomes just has that locked, and there's going to be a lot that needs to turn my head to not have him as number 1.
If there's going to be a guy to me that from a talent standpoint or from having this year's standpoint, if there's going to be a guy that catches Burrow as the number 2, I think it's going to be Trevor Lawrence. And I don't think that should be a surprise to anybody because, like, what do we expect from Trevor Lawrence when he was coming into the league? Trevor Lawrence, when he came into the league, was supposed to be the next God-given talent. But he's supposed to be this. He's supposed, yeah. One, like is he like
but bigger than Burrow, faster than Burrow, more? Yeah, I mean, he was the prince that was promised after 1 year in college. Like
he's a top 3 1-1 player in the history of like our lifetime, like or like in the 21st century. It's him, it's Wembanyama, or like the top 2 1-1s, and Andrew Luck, and then Zion.
Yeah.
Which Luck and Zion, like
Andrew Luck had a really good career.
He did, but
Yeah,
I don't.
That's not fair to compare him to Zion.
Andrew Luck is one of the greatest talents in the gridiron we've ever seen. One of the best minds, an ultimate competitor, and a guy whose body gave out. But and a guy who clearly was so smart that he knew when it was time to hang it up. But I think if you ask NFL people by and large, his career was a little underwhelming because he hung it up early.
Of course. There's no debating that. Zion's like, was he 23? And we're already having this conversation about him like that. It's different. Luck played his first 5 seasons. It's not like he missed like season 2 through 4 and then was like, oh, I think I'm done. Played like one good season and was like, I'm gonna hang up the pads. I mean, it is wild just looking at his NFL reference, his Pro Football Reference. I mean, he played 6 seasons of NFL football.
Ridiculous. It's crazy.
Did it feel like it was longer than that? It really did feel much longer than that. Like 8 to 10 years.
Ooh, Charles H. Yeah, he did feel like longer than that. It felt like that whole era felt long. Let's throw Charles H's question up, and then Nick, we'll go back to the schedule after we answer Charles's question.
Yeah, let's do it.
Do you think Lou and Arumo's new defense secondary will be able to adjust to in-game planning adjustments? Von Bell and Bates, they did. The Jesse Bates, our special guest, will join us another time, but that was something I wanted to talk to him about. With Lou ASD, Jesse Bates being gone, I think they'll be fine. I think, like we talked about at the top, they have a lot of depth going on in the defensive backfield. I think the key on defense, which if you go back to Bill Belichick's defense, and that's kind of like what we like to, wrap as the pinnacle or what you measure against. Yes, he's had superstars, but the thing he's always had is depth. Running guys in, fresh legs. It shouldn't be if you're talking about fresh legs on running backs and wide receivers, it should be no different on defense. And I think the depth that the Cincinnati Bengals exemplify in the defensive front with their front four, and I think in the defensive backfield, like we said at the top, they've spent a lot of draft capital early on the defensive backfields, and if you go to the defensive line,
those two position groups play hand in hand on the football field. That's one thing that Bill always does better than anyone. And I think the one thing maybe we were besmirching the Pats too early this year, Josh, is that y'all's defensive line is awesome. And I think the Myles Murphy pick is really, really going to help them out. I mean, you take so much pressure off of your defensive backfield, and it's not that the personnel for the Bengals isn't there. It is. But when you have Hubbard and Hendrickson and Murphy and Reeder, up the middle, and Osai on the edge, and those guys getting after opposing quarterbacks, that makes the job a lot easier for guys on the backside. But there's true depth there. I mean, DJ Turner and Mike Hilton.
Jordan Battle, I think, is a really talented safety that went probably later than he should because of his position. Yeah. And I think he could come in and be nice for the Bengals. I think Dax Hill, a good pick.
This is a really good Bengals defense. It projects to be a high-performing Bengals defense.
And it has to be because the rest of that division it's going to be high octane in that division. There's no bad offense. All right, dudes, let's do it.
Okay, let's see if we can get to the 14-3. If we feel that is the truth. Are you pulling it up, Josh?
Yeah, I got it. Okay, Let me get to my notebook. Wet over here for my coffee. Okay, let's do it. Wins, losses. We want to get to 14-3. The over-under for the Cincinnati Bengals is 11.5. Nick, we'll start with you at Cleveland.
Win.
Toss.
Win.
Toss, we'll go to you. Ravens, home.
Win.
Nick?
I'm going to give this one a win.
You like the Ravens, though.
I do, but there's another game to be played, so I'll give this one a win.
Nice. Okay, home versus the Rams Super Bowl rematch Monday Night Football on ESPN.
Win.
Win.
At Tennessee.
Win.
Win.
At Arizona.
Blowout.
W.
Cardinals going to stink. Home versus the Water Falcons.
Win.
Win.
Heading to the bye week, we are 6-0, feeling good, feeling frisky. At San Francisco.
Win.
Win.
I was going to say there. Here's one thing I want to say about San Francisco really quickly. I think everyone is a little. I think their quarterback situation is a little more sketchy than people are giving it credit for.
I agree. I think they'll get there. I think they'll have a tough regular season, though.
As of right now, week 1, they play the Pittsburgh Steelers. Talking about the 49ers, they are 3-point favorites without even knowing who their quarterback is going to be for that game. So,
Is it home?
No, it's in Pittsburgh.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I'll be
undefeated.
taking a home dog for that with a side of fries. Okay, undefeated week 9, home versus Buffalo.
Loss.
I'm going to say win. Get Josh involved here. Josh, what do you say?
I'm going to say win.
Wow.
Versus Houston.
Win.
So they're 9-0 right now.
9-0 heading to Baltimore.
Loss.
I agree. Okay. Hey, look, we're trying to get to 14-3. Home versus Pittsburgh.
Win.
At Jacksonville.
Ooh, loss.
Win.
Monday night.
Lost. I'm 10 toes down on Jacksonville. I was
All right.
10 toes off last year, and I'm man enough to admit when I'm wrong, and I was wrong last year about the Jaguars. I'm 10 toes down.
Okay.
Home versus the Colts.
Win.
Home versus the Vikings.
Win.
That one's also going to be a win.
It's going to be a good game, though. This is where it gets dicey, guys. Charles H., I hope you're still here. Your 14-3 prediction. At Mike Tomlin, Kenny Flickett, the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Loss.
At Kansas City versus Patrick Mahomes.
Loss.
Win.
I go lost, too. I'm not going to get too fancy.
Ooh.
Never lost in the regular season to Patrick Mahomes.
First time for everything. I've never tied my shoes. I always slipped them on, but tied my shoes yesterday. Home versus the Cleveland Browns.
Potential all-time quarterbacks playing each other is a little bit different than you tying your shoes. A little bit more stakes involved.
Yeah, maybe, dude. Maybe.
Potentially. Depends on what surface you're walking on. Yeah.
Ankles, bro. It's not easy in California. Okay, this is interesting, though. Home versus the Browns.
We did this the other day, and we gave Cleveland the win because we thought Joe was going to sit. So
we did, but given the way that this is played out, I would say that they're probably playing for the first seed in the AFC, and I think they win this game because they have to.
I think I see both sides, obviously, but I think
of course.
I think when we do this, we go best case scenario for the teams, right? Like we're operating like in favor of the teams, like being like at their absolute best. So I think a Browns when we do the Browns schedule plays, and I think a Bengals when we do the Bengals schedule plays operating under that notion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely like taking the approach personally of it being in a vacuum, us looking at this one team schedule.
Well, just not to like overdo it right now, but do we think that looking at the schedule for the Chiefs, like week 17, are the Chiefs going to be a game up on the Bengals with a home win, a head-to-head win on them? Like, this is the Chiefs schedule now.
I think they absolutely could be. Tough that they have to play Philadelphia. If they get them at home, that's nice. They have to go to Green Bay. That's never fun.
The only reason I'll give them a win is because I think they could be playing for seeding. Like, you could be playing to avoid a team. You could be playing for home field. Like, if them and the Jaguars have the same record and they've lost to the Jaguars already, I'll give them a win. I think there's just too much to be playing for. But I think that they could also be sitting pretty easily and be in a position where
100%. Yeah.
Last question I want to ask you guys, though. So we have them at 13-4 or 12-5, regardless, hitting the over. Better. What's a more reasonable ranking or more unreasonable ranking? Depends how you look at it. Jamar Chase is the number 2 fantasy wide receiver, or T. Higgins is the number 14.
Is that current ADP right now?
Current ADP, like, what do you think is like the more reasonable ranking?
Jamar. I think
Jamar's your number
2. is reasonable, and I think T. Higgins needs to be moved up even more. We talked about him potentially being our top 10 the other day.
I think he's being undervalued too.
Yeah, but
I
there
don't-
are okay, we were making that top 10 wide receiver list, and I was pushing back on Amon-Ra being in the top 10 from a fantasy perspective. Look, he's the number one receiver on that team. Like, there are just guys that are going to get more looks than T. Higgins, presumably because they are the number one wide receiver on their team, and they don't also have Jamar Chase on their team. So it feels like a pretty accurate ADP for him. But
I
of course,
think
he's a guy that can score a lot of touchdowns. So that, that could help him become a wide receiver one this season if you're in a 10, 12-man league.
Yeah, I'll just throw up the rankings really quickly. Like the guys ahead of him right now, he's 14. Like Devonta, DK, Jalen Waddle, like he could easily. Like I would feel more comfortable taking T. Higgins and all those guys, especially if he's my wide receiver too.
Then Adams?
No. Waddle, Devonta Smith, and
Smith.
and DK Metcalf.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. I'd probably take T in that position.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right, well, gentlemen, we'll do fantasy football another time. Charles H was still with us. He gave the Burrow to Brady comp. He's got to win some Super Bowls, and Mahomes to Drew Brees comp. Mahomes has already passed Drew Brees in Super Bowl appearances and Super Bowl wins. Mahomes is entering that upper echelon of category in his own. But we root for the Benjis. We root for Joe Burrow, Joe Cool, and Joe Burr, as seen on my hat. Really quickly, do the Bengals make the Super Bowl? Yes or no?
No.
I think they make the AFC Championship once again and don't make the Super Bowl.
Patrick Mahomes, somebody needs to go and stop this man. God. But hey, greatness is greatness. Fisher, to Topless DJ, Nikki Snacks, Kreider, free throws, hit him. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you guys next time.